History has a dark secret. It's not just shaped by brilliant minds, it's often derailed by breathtaking idiocy. We're about to show you the bank robber who used lemon juice for invisibility, the politician who thought an island could tip over, and the president who literally died from his own ego after giving a speech. These aren't just mistakes. These are the 33 legendary failures that prove common sense is an extremely rare commodity. Let's begin the countdown. 1. Let's kick things off with MacArthur Wheeler, a man whose criminal genius was, to put it mildly, half-baked. In 1995, Wheeler decided to rob 2 banks in broad daylight. His master plan for invisibility? Lemon juice. You see, he knew lemon juice could be used as invisible ink, so he logically concluded that rubbing it all over his face would make him invisible to security cameras. Armed with this bulletproof theory, he walked into the banks, smiled directly at the cameras, and walked out with the cash. He was, of course, arrested that very same evening after the police broadcasted the crystal-clear surveillance footage on the news. His shock upon seeing the tapes was genuine. "But I wore the juice," he mumbled, a testament to the fact that confidence is not a substitute for basic chemistry. 2. Next up is a man who proves that you can fail your way to the top. Lord Timothy Dexter. This eccentric 18th century businessman had the Midas touch in reverse. Every idiotic idea he had somehow turned to gold. His rivals, trying to ruin him, once convinced him to ship a cargo of bed warmers to the scorching hot West Indies. A dumb move, right? Wrong. They arrived and were immediately snapped up by the local sugar industry, who used them as perfect ladles for molasses. Another time, he sent shiploads of coal to Newcastle, a city famous for its coal mining. A guaranteed loss. Except a massive miners' strike had just paralyzed the city, and he sold his coal at an astronomical profit. He was the human embodiment of a cosmic joke, a walking, breathing paradox who became a millionaire by accident. 3. Meat mad. Mike Hughes, a man whose belief system was as flat as he believed the Earth to be. Hughes was a limo driver and daredevil, utterly convinced that NASA and the scientific community were pulling the wool over our eyes. To prove it, he decided to do what any reasonable flat earther would: build a homemade, steam-powered rocket in his backyard to launch himself high enough to see the frisbee shape of our world with his own eyes. After several failed attempts and near disasters, in February 2020, Hughes launched his rocket one last time. Tragically, but perhaps predictably, the rocket malfunctioned moments after takeoff, and he plummeted to his death. He died for his cause, a cause based on ignoring thousands of years of scientific evidence, making him a martyr for monumental stupidity. 4. You expect a certain level of intellect from your elected officials. Congressman Hank Johnson, however, decided to challenge that expectation in 2010. During a House Armed Services Committee hearing about a planned military buildup on the island of Guam, Johnson shared a grave concern with a top admiral. He wasn't worried about logistics or environmental impact. No, his fear was far more profound. He worried that stationing 8,000 additional Marines and their families on the island might cause the entire landmass to become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize. Yes, he was deadly serious. He feared a floating island. The admiral, bless his heart, managed to keep a straight face and assure the congressman that Guam was, in fact, firmly attached to the ocean floor and was in no danger of flipping over. 5. In the world of professional sports, there's a thin line between glory and infamy. In 1964, Minnesota Vikings defensive end Jim Marshall didn't just cross that line. He sprinted 64 yards past it in the wrong direction. During a game against the San Francisco 49ers, Marshall recovered a fumble. In a moment of pure adrenaline and confused glory, he took off for the end zone, running for the touchdown of his dreams. The crowd was screaming, his opponents looked baffled, and Marshall was a hero for a moment. The problem? He was running towards his own end zone. He triumphantly threw the ball into the air, scoring a safety for the other team. It remains arguably the most magnificent, hilarious, and brain-dead failure in the history of sports. 6. Winning the Boston Marathon is a feat of legendary endurance, requiring months of brutal training and superhuman willpower. Or, you could just do what Rosie Ruiz did. In 1980, Ruiz was declared the female winner of the prestigious race, crossing the finish line in a record time. But something was off. Spectators and fellow runners noted she was barely sweating and didn't seem particularly tired. Her post-race interviews revealed she knew absolutely nothing about running. The truth soon came out. Ruiz had run for only about the last mile. For the other 25 miles, she had simply taken the Boston subway, then hopped out of the crowd near the end to sprint to her unearned victory. She was stripped of her title, becoming an icon of audacious, lazy, and idiotic cheating. 7. Presenting William Henry Harrison, the 9th President of the United States, whose entire term in office serves as a darkly hilarious, cautionary tale about pride. In March 1841, the 68-year-old Harrison wanted to prove he was a tough-as-nails war hero, not some frail old man. So, on his inauguration day, a bitterly cold and wet morning, he refused to wear a coat, hat, or gloves. He then proceeded to deliver the longest inaugural address in American history, clocking in at nearly 2 hours in the freezing rain. The speech was meant to project strength. Instead, it gave him a killer case of pneumonia. He died exactly 1 month later, earning him the record for the shortest presidency in history. He successfully proved he was tough, just not tough enough to survive his own ego. 8. Evel Knievel was a legend, a man who defied death on his motorcycle for a living. But his most ambitious stunt became his most embarrassing failure. In 1974, he planned to jump the massive Snake River Canyon in Idaho. A regular motorcycle wouldn't do, so he commissioned a steam-powered rocket called the SkyCycle X2. The hype was immense. The world was watching. As the countdown finished, the SkyCycle roared to life and shot up the ramp. But in a moment of pure comedic failure, the parachute designed to bring him down safely on the other side deployed prematurely on the launch ramp. Instead of soaring across the canyon in a blaze of glory, the rocket helplessly flopped over the edge, slowly and shamefully drifting down to the canyon floor below. It was less of a daredevil stunt and more of a sad science fair project gone wrong. 9. Imagine you're an inventor, and you've created something so revolutionary it will change cities and how humans live. This was Dean Kamen, the creator of the Segway. He hyped his secret project, codenamed Ginger, so intensely that giants like Steve Jobs predicted it would be bigger than the personal computer. The world held its breath, expecting flying cars or personal jetpacks. What they got was a self-balancing, two-wheeled scooter, a glorified kickboard for mall cops and tourists who find walking too challenging. The Segway became a running gag, a symbol of overblown hype. The ultimate tragicomic punchline came years later when the owner of the Segway company, Jimmy Heselden, died after accidentally driving his own Segway off a cliff. You simply cannot write a more perfect, ironic ending. 10. If you're going to attempt to assassinate a president, it's probably best not to pick Andrew Jackson, a man who was already a legendary tough guy before he even got to the White House. But Richard Lawrence decided to try his luck in 1835. He approached Jackson and pulled the trigger on his pistol at point-blank range. Click, misfire. Undeterred, Lawrence pulled out a second pistol and fired again. Click. Another misfire. The odds of two separate pistols misfiring in a row were later calculated as 1 in 125,000. But Jackson didn't wait for a third try. The enraged 67-year-old president charged Lawrence and proceeded to beat the would-be assassin senseless with his walking cane until others pulled him away. Lawrence failed to make history, but he did get a history lesson directly from the president's cane. 11. Let's travel to 1962. A young, energetic four-piece band from Liverpool walks into Decca Records for a career-making audition. They play their hearts out. After the session, the executives huddled together to make a decision that would echo through the halls of corporate idiocy for eternity. they passed. They rejected the band, with one executive famously declaring, "Guitar groups are on their way out." That band, of course, was the Beatles. While Decca Records signed a different group that day who quickly faded into obscurity, the Beatles signed with EMI, went on to become the biggest band in the history of the world and changed music forever. Decca's decision wasn't just a mistake. It was the business equivalent of looking at the invention of the wheel and saying, "Nah, I think we'll stick with dragging things." 12. Some people chase fame through talent, innovation, or bravery. And then there's Pliny L. Wingo, a man who decided his path to immortality was to walk backward. In 1931, this Texas native embarked on a quest of magnificent pointlessness. To walk from Santa Monica, California, to Istanbul, Turkey, entirely in reverse. He even fashioned a pair of glasses with rearview mirrors to see where he was going. For 18 grueling months, he shuffled backward across continents, becoming a minor celebrity for his utterly bizarre feat. He eventually succeeded, arriving in Istanbul a year and a half later. He secured his place in the record books, but also raised the profound philosophical question: if you spend that much time and effort achieving something so profoundly useless, does it even count as an achievement? 13. In the 1950s, America was gripped by a moral panic, and its unlikely villain was the comic book. The man fanning the flames was psychiatrist Frederick Wertham. In his book, Seduction of the Innocent, he presented his expert analysis, which was, frankly, insane. According to Wertham, Superman was a fascist symbol, Wonder Woman's strength made her a corrupting lesbian, and the dynamic duo of Batman and Robin was nothing more than a homosexual fantasy. He claimed these colorful pages were a direct cause of juvenile delinquency. His pseudo-scientific nonsense was taken so seriously that it led to U.S. Senate hearings and the creation of the Comics Code Authority, a censorship body that neutered the industry for decades. One man's bizarre paranoid delusions nearly destroyed an entire American art form. 14. Donald Sterling was the longtime billionaire owner of the LA Clippers basketball team, a man known for being eccentric and cheap. But his true idiocy was revealed not on the court, but on a tape recording. In 2014, the world got to hear a conversation between Sterling and his mistress, in which he went on a vile, racist tirade, berating her for publicly associating with black people, including the legendary Magic Johnson. In the age of smartphones, having such a conversation is like playing Russian roulette with your entire career. The tape was leaked, the public outcry was deafening, and the NBA, a league predominantly comprised of black athletes, had no choice. They banned him for life and forced him to sell the team, wiping out his legacy with one spectacularly stupid, self-inflicted blow. 15. Every politician wants to be known for tackling the big issues. For Congressman James Riley in the 1990s, that big issue was exploding toilets. Yes, you heard that right. Riley became fixated on what he claimed was a rampant and dangerous problem of toilets exploding aboard U.S. Navy vessels. He passionately demanded that millions of taxpayer dollars be allocated to investigate and solve this porcelain crisis. The only problem? The Navy itself seemed mostly unaware of this widespread epidemic. While his colleagues debated matters of national security and the economy, Riley was waging a lonely war against ceramic projectiles in naval bathrooms. He became a national laughingstock, a perfect symbol of a politician desperately searching for a problem to solve, even if he has to invent one. 16. The year is 1988, and Senator Gary Hart is the charismatic, handsome frontrunner for the Democratic presidential nomination. His campaign, however, is dogged by rumors of womanizing. When confronted by the press, Hart displayed a level of hubris that should be studied by political scientists for centuries. He dared the media, "Follow me around, I don't care, they'll be very bored." It was a direct challenge, a taunt to the entire journalistic profession. The Miami Herald promptly accepted his challenge. They staked out his Washington townhouse and, within days, caught him with a young model named Donna Rice. The story, complete with a photo of Rice sitting on Hart's lap on a yacht aptly named Monkey Business, destroyed his campaign overnight. He basically invited the media to his own execution. 17. The name Kellogg is synonymous with breakfast cereal, but behind the wholesome flakes lies a truly bizarre story, thanks to Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. He wasn't just a health guru, he was the mad scientist of wellness. At his famous Battle Creek Sanitarium, the rich and famous flocked to him for cures. His methods? Utterly insane. He believed most ailments, especially the sin of sexual desire, stemmed from a poor diet. His solution included a bland, meat-free regimen, which led to the invention of cornflakes, and, most notoriously, yogurt enemas. He promoted near-constant flushing of the colon with gallons of yogurt, sometimes with the help of a machine that could pump 15 quarts in a minute. He was a pioneer of the wellness industry, and also a pioneer of making rich people pay for the privilege of having yogurt shot up their backside. 18. Jerry Falwell Jr. was the president of Liberty University, one of the largest evangelical Christian universities in the world, and a powerful voice in conservative politics. His image was built on promoting family values and a strict moral code. That image came crashing down spectacularly in 2020. First, a photo surfaced of him on a yacht, drink in hand, pants unzipped, with his arm around a woman who was not his wife. It was a bizarre look for a religious leader. But that was just the appetizer. The main course was a bombshell scandal involving a multi-year affair that his wife was allegedly having with a young pool attendant from Miami, an arrangement Falwell Jr. not only knew about, but, according to the pool attendant, enjoyed watching. The hypocrisy was so staggering, it caused a complete career meltdown. 19. In the high-stakes game of politics, a single dumb sentence can end a career. Exhibit A. Todd Akin, a congressman running for the Senate in 2012. During an interview, he was asked to clarify his hardline anti-abortion stance, specifically in cases of rape. Akin, attempting to sound scientific, dropped a line of such breathtaking biological ignorance that it became an instant classic. He claimed that in cases of what he called legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down to prevent pregnancy. The backlash was immediate and brutal. The concept of legitimate rape was offensive, and the shut that whole thing down biology was laughed at by literally anyone who passed a middle school health class. His campaign imploded on the spot, all thanks to one moment of weapons-grade stupidity. 20. Greed can make people do incredibly stupid things, and the Hunt brothers of Texas are a prime example. In 1979, Nelson and William Hunt, heirs to a massive oil fortune, decided they weren't rich enough. So they came up with a simple yet monumentally idiotic plan: corner the world's silver market. They believed they could buy up so much physical silver and so many futures contracts that they could essentially control the global price and become silver kings. For a while, it worked. The price of silver skyrocketed, but they forgot one tiny detail: markets and regulators can fight back. The federal commodity regulators and the New York Mercantile Exchange changed the rules, effectively calling their bluff. The silver bubble burst, the price crashed, and the Hunt brothers lost over $1 billion, nearly causing a global financial crisis in the process. 21. When Albert Einstein died in 1955, the world mourned the loss of a great mind. Pathologist Thomas Harvey, who performed the autopsy, decided to take that sentiment a little too literally. Without permission from Einstein's family, Harvey stole his brain. He thought he could unlock the secrets of genius by studying it. For the next 4 decades, Harvey kept one of the most famous brains in history floating in a jar of formaldehyde in his basement. He would move across the country, taking the brain with him like a weird, sloshing pet. Occasionally, he'd slice off a piece and send it to a curious researcher. But despite his macabre obsession, Harvey himself wasn't a top neuroscientist. He made no groundbreaking discoveries. He was just a guy who committed a felony and spent the rest of his life as the slightly creepy custodian of a stolen brain. 22. Alex Jones built an empire on conspiracy theories, but his relentless campaign against the victims of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting revealed a level of cruel idiocy that is hard to comprehend. For years after the 2012 tragedy, where 20 children and 6 adults were murdered, Jones used his InfoWars platform to push the lie that the shooting was a government hoax and that the grieving parents were crisis actors. His followers, egged on by his rants, harassed, threatened, and tormented these families for a decade. Eventually, the parents sued him for defamation. In court, Jones's lies fell apart. The result? Juries ordered him to pay the families nearly $1.5 billion. He found out the hard way that freedom of speech doesn't protect you from the consequences of being a malicious, destructive idiot. 23. Most people, when they want to impress an ex, might get a new haircut or post a nice photo on social media. Robert Driscoll was not most people. In 1976, this disgruntled truck driver decided on a slightly grander gesture. He stole a freaking Boeing 707 cargo jet from an airport in Angola where he was working. Despite having only minimal flight training, he managed to get the massive plane into the air and circled for several hours. His goal? Apparently, to show his ex-wife back home what he was capable of. The international incident he caused involved frantic communications between Africa and the United States. He eventually landed the plane, only to be arrested. There's no record of whether his ex was impressed, but it's safe to say this was probably not the grand romantic gesture he had envisioned. 24. Throughout history, there have been charismatic leaders who convinced their followers of some truly strange things. But few were as fundamentally, cosmically wrong as Cyrus Teed. In the late 19th century, Teed, a former physician, had a divine vision. The revelation: humanity isn't living on the outside of a spinning globe. No, we are all living on the inside of a hollow earth, with the sun, moon, and stars all contained within this giant concave sphere. He called his theory Koreshanity and managed to attract a few thousand followers to a commune in Florida to live by his inside-out principles. They conducted experiments to prove their theory, which of course failed. But Teed was a master of explaining away facts. He was a con man of cosmic proportions who convinced people to reject all of science and logic in favor of his own beautifully stupid universe. 25. Elias Jackson Lucky Baldwin was a man who embodied the wild spirit of 19th century California, earning and losing fortunes with reckless abandon. His nickname Lucky was mostly ironic, as his life was a series of spectacular gambles, many of which backfired hilariously. The crown jewel of his idiocy came in 1888. He had just finished building the most opulent hotel in San Francisco, the Baldwin Hotel, a masterpiece of luxury. On the very eve of its grand opening, Baldwin, a notorious penny pincher when it came to practical matters, refused to take out fire insurance on the building, considering it an unnecessary expense. You can probably guess what happened next. A fire broke out and the entire magnificent structure burned to the ground in a matter of hours, a total and complete loss. He literally watched his uninsured fortune go up in smoke. 26. Mike Tyson was one of the most ferocious and talented boxers to ever step into the ring. His financial sense, however, was about as sharp as a marshmallow. After earning over $300 million in his career, he managed to spend it all in a blaze of idiotic glory that is almost as legendary as his left hook. The biting of Evander Holyfield's ear was a moment of madness, but his spending habits were a long-term descent into fiscal insanity. He bought fleets of luxury cars he never drove, mansions he barely lived in, and a $2 million solid gold bathtub for his first wife. His most famous purchase? 3 Royal Bengal tigers, which cost a fortune to buy and another fortune to feed and house. Unsurprisingly, this lifestyle led directly to bankruptcy, proving you can be a titan in the ring and a complete fool with a checkbook. 27. James Gordon Bennett Jr. was the eccentric, fabulously wealthy owner of the New York Herald. He was a man who could have anything he wanted except, it turned out, a shred of self-control. In 1877, he was engaged to a beautiful socialite, Caroline May. On New Year's Day, Bennett attended a party at his future in-laws' mansion, where he proceeded to get blindingly drunk. Looking for a place to relieve himself and finding the bathrooms occupied, he made a decision that would instantly incinerate his social standing. He walked up to the grand fireplace in the main parlor and urinated into it in full view of the horrified guests. Some versions of the story say it was a grand piano. Either way, the engagement was immediately called off, and Caroline's brother later challenged him to a duel. Bennett's legacy was forever cemented not as a newspaper magnate, but as the guy who mistook a high society party for a urinal.